אני הבנתי שהיה באלף וורט.
עברו כולם בשעות, ואז הוא פשוט הלך לבד ל...
יפ.
שהתבלבלת.
שם נשק. רגע, למה לא דרפנו לך נשק? יש לנו 6,000 כולנו. יש בלונג? אני גרוע.
אינפו?
עוד אחד בלונג? מת?
שורט.
וורט. האם יהיה עוד שורט? אופס. סתם ריססתי. יש במיד עם אופו סקאוט.
נייס.
נייס. בום נפלה בסוסייד. ואחרון בלונג. הבא.
הנשק שלי. אתה לוקח אותו תמיד.
הכל טוב, קח אותו. אני אלך מה...
כבר פרץ ב-A.
יפ, נייס.
what the fuck.
רמת? מויס.
יש לו זוס יותר יפה.
ידעתי שאתה תשרוד אגב.
מה זה יותר יפה?
יש לו זוס יותר יפה, יש לו את הסקין החדש של הזוס.
אבל זה אותו סקין. הם
עשו
עשו
סורנדר.
סורנדר. איך אפשר לעשות סורנדר?
זה אותו סקין, מה אתה מדבר?
בלי בן.
אני יודע, תן מה אתה... שלא יותר יפה, אבל שלא זה מינימל וויר.
שלי מינימל וויר.
שלא
חשבתי שיש
הכי
לך זה
גבוה.
פקטורי.
שלא פקטורי.
בדיוק.
פקטורי ניו.
לא, אין טעם, לא רואים הבדל.
יש לו יותר מפקטורי ניו.
רום, רוצה לשחק איתנו CS? עוד אחד?
לא נראה לי.
תודה.
טוב. פארטי פופרס.
איי.
מישהו רוצה שיוריד סקוואד.
לא, תודה.
גם אם הייתי רוצה, אני לא יכולה להריץ את זה על המחשב.
GeForce Now.
כן, תשלם סאבסקריפשן להיות עם לייטנסי בשביל לשחק איתך סקוואד, ברור כפרה.
אני גם לא חושב שכבר יש לייטנסי כבר כזה נורא בדברים האלה.
תמיד הם מרגישים לייטנסי בסטרים של משחק, זה לא משנה מה תעשה. כי המערכת צריכה לעשות לך את כל...
תגיד לי, נראה לך שאני אשלם להם? אם הוא רוצה שישלם עליי, אני לא אשלם.
את תשחקי ככה?
לא, אבל...
אז למה שהוא ישלם על זה?
אבל אם הוא רוצה, הוא הציע. הוא
לא הייתה הצעה רצינית.
אבל זה מטומטם, כי גם משלמים על השירות של הNVIDIA וגם משלמים על המשחק. מפגר.
כן, צריך שיהיה לך ראשון למשחק.
היה לי ידיד בריטי ששילם על זה.
אני ניסיתי את זה בפרי
דגש על היאללה. דגש על היה.
היה. לפני 5 שנים. 6.
8.
רק היה.
היה. גם היה מוסלמי. אתה זוכר אותו בטח.
קרה, התאבד? עשה פיגוע?
לא. חבל שלא עשה פיגוע.
למה זה יורגים אותו?
אז הוא היה מת מהפיגוע.
לא כל פיגוע זה התאבדות.
רוב הפיגועים
ולא כל התאבדות היא פיגוע.
בדיוק.
רק המאפנים מתאבדים.
לא, רק המאפנים עושים את זה פיגוע.
בדיוק. תודה שאתה פה.
קיבלתי מכם סרטן.
בדיוק.
יצא אותי זה לסולו לבלי.
מתי יוציאו את העונה השנייה? אף פעם? כי הם חרות.
Arise from the shadow.
עונה ראשונה חלק 2.
זה ליטרלי מה שזה אמר. כן, לא, אבל זה ככה מרגיש איך שהם סיימו את העונה הראשונה. זה איגריס, ארייז! טוב, נגמר.
מה, אם הם עושים את זה כל עונה 10 פרקים, זה ייקח להם כמו וואן פיס, 20 שנה לסיים את זה.
בקצב שהם עשו, כן. איגריס כאילו זה... אה, זה די התחלה. והמאסטרי של הנקרומנסינג. כאילו... זה נשמע מתקדם, אבל סונג ג'ין וו זה פאקינג כלום.
טוב, איזה נודלס תחמם?
את שלי. סתם.
kinda gay.
אה? לא יודע, הייתי... לא הרגשתי טוב.
רעב.
זרקת כאילו... leftovers?
לא, פשוט... כולם לקחו ואני לא.
או...
נחמד מצלך לחלוק.
די, כזה אני.
מקווה שלמדת את הלקח.
בוא'נה!
וואו.
רק מומי יודע בכלל למה אמרתי בוא'נה, אבל בסדר. רגע, מה אמרת?
לחלוק.
מה לחלוק? אוקיי.
נו, ואז מה? ואז היא אמרה.
לא, אני דיברתי רק על מה שרום אמר.
רגע, הוא לא שילם?
5 שעות שואל אותו כמה זה עלה. הוא לא מוכן להגיד לי.
טוב, נו.
כן, פתחתי עכשיו חבילת...
פילישו.
כן, פתחתי את זה. אני פה בחדר וזה, אתה יודע, זה יבש. זה לא מוכן. גם פתחתי את זה.
וואי, הרגת אותי רב.
באתי לאכול... פריז דרייט. נאצי?
איזה מהם פתח? איזה... מה, מנה חמה או ש...
כן. לא, כאילו, לא תעשה הכנה מהירה.
אוקיי,
זה
מה, איזה...
מהביו. יש לי מגוון.
תראה לי את ה... תעשו תמונה.
קנו באיזה 700 שקל.
כבר אכלתי חלק.
מה אכלת? לא, תראה את מה שאתה פתחת עכשיו, מה שכמעט פתחת.
לא, אני סתם מצאתי משהו מהשקית, לא יודע מה זה בכלל.
של סמיאנג או של... משהו...
צ'פגטי. צ'פגטי.
איך, אכלתי את זה, זה אחד המגעילים.
תודה.
איך,
זה קוריאני.
נו בסדר, לא כל
איזה טעם
קוריאני
אכלת
זה...
אבל.
שועית שחורה נראה לי? איך.
הנה, גם אותו יש לי פה ביד.
תשמע, זה טעים עד שהטעם לוואי פוגש אותך.
רגע, שוויץ' וואו זה של סמיאנג.
כן.
יאללה מתוקים, תודה על המשחקים, אני אתקפל לי. נדבר
לילה
מחר
טוב.
כזה. ביי, לילה טוב.
יש לי גם אוקינאווה סטייל. בטעם דשי מסורתי.
שלחתי תמונה, אני לא...
יש לי את של... מה זה? של מי זה? זה גם סמיאנג. משהו גבינה.
סמיאנג הכי טעים.
כן, לא, אבל השוויץ' שחור הזה של סמיאנג.
כן, זה ספציפית, לא אהבתי על זה.
צ'פגטי הזה בטעם סויה כהה.
מעניין. אולי אני אנסה את זה. לא ידעתי שיש להם עוד טעמים. חשבתי שזה רק שועית שחורה.
יש שם מגוון עצום של טעמים. יש פה גם... תצא לי מהשקית כבר! מה זה? ראמן בטעם מיסו עשיר.
זה נשמע טוב.
הקאטה פרימיום ראמן יפני בטעם מסורתי עשיר. טוקיו פרימיום ראמן יפני בטעם רוטב סויה עדין.
תאכל את המיסו. מיסו טעים ממש.
נכון, יש לי את האודון קימצ'י.
אוח. קנית קימצ'י? בכללי כאילו?
לא,
וואי וואי וואי, איך? היית בחנות אסיאתית ולא קנית קימצ'י. איי איי איי.
לא מלהיב אותי כל כך.
לא בא?
אה?
מה אמרת?
שזה לא מלהיב אותי יותר מדי.
באמת?
כאילו זה סבבה.
וואי, מלא. אני לא יכולה לאכול אוכל אסיאתי בלי קימצ'י.
אוכל אסי... את מדברת על החמוצים היפנים? שהם לא
לא
באמת
יפני,
יפנים?
קוריאני.
אבל זה לא בדיוק...
יש
זה
שתי
כבוש,
סוגים של קימצ'י. יש שתי סוגים של קימצ'י. יש יפני ויש קוריאני. קוריאני זה
מה
חריף.
שמגישים בארץ זה לא זה ולא זה.
לא, אנשים לא
או.
יודעים
אתה לא מתייחס לוואטסאפ.
טוב, מה נעשה קודם?
מיסו.
מיסו דווקא?
וואי, מיסו ממש טעים. ממש טעים. זה לא בעיה. תמצא באינטרנט, זה לא...
יואו.
רוצה אני אמצא לך?
לא, הכל טוב, יש גוגל טרנסלייט.
אני גם צריכה ללכת לקנות מלאי חדש. קניתי גם קימצ'י.
גוגל טרנסלייט, אתה יודע איך תרגיל את זה.
מה? תרשום צ'פגטי בגוגל. נרשום, רגע.
זה נשמע כמו איטלקי צרפתי.
כי-
צ'פגטי.
מאחורה יתרגם טוב.
צ'פגטי, נודלס,
יאללה חברים, שיהיה לכם לילה חרא.
גם לך,
ואמן תתעוררו להודעות משי.
אתה מבין
גם
שזונה.
אתה.
אתה מלמל
ורום.
גם.
טיול שטח.
מה עם
טיול
זה?
שטח. טיול
רגע, למה אתה
שטח.
הולך לישון? פאק, אחת.
טיול שטח, טיול שטח, טיול שטח.
אין לי מושג איזה טעם זה, אבל אני אקח את זה, אני אנסה את זה.
לילה טוב.
אבל אני כאן צריך לתרגם את
טוב.
הלילת.
אמ, אמ,
טוב, בוא נראה מה התרגום להוראות, כי זה... 600 ליטרס of water. עכשיו 600 ליטר.
600 ליטר?
זה התרגום של גוגל. אתה יכול אני די בטוח שלקחתי אחד כמו שלך, רק בלי תרגום. אתה יכול להעתיק לי, לצלם לי? מה?
וואו, איזה מהיר אתה.
איך הספקת?
כמה קנית?
הלו, זה פי 2 ממה שיש לי בתמונה.
שומע? אני קניתי את הכמות שאתה קנית ואני חודשיים כבר עם זה. וואו. מה קנית? איזה?
זה... עברו 6 ימים.
מה? מה 6 ימים? 6 ימים, אוקיי. מהיר אתה רום. זאת שיטה.
עמק. איך אני... לא צריך לתרגם את זה. אני עושה את זה ככה. לא, יש פה כאלה עם נורות שונות. מה אמרת? תרגם לי... בוא נראה. The taste of the food, the body, the taste, the volume of the food, the amount of water. The amount of water, 600 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, 000. הוראות 2. Removing water, changing the taste, improving the taste of the sea, make it possible for people to use it.
כאילו, אתה פשוט שם את זה במים רותחים.
לא, אני... כאילו כן, אבל...
שם את זה במים רותחים, שם את כל הרטבים, כל מה שמגיע עם זה. במים הרותחים, שם את הנודלס, ומחכה שזה יהיה כזה תיק. זה לא נוזלי, אבל... כן, נשאר לך את הסרטון.
למשל פה רשום, אפשר לראות מה מותחים כ5 דקות. לסנן ולהשאיר 8 כפות מים.
ככה הוא עושה, אבל...
כי כל אחד פה עם הוראות אחרות.
אני האמת לא זוכרת איך עשיתי את זה.
ואז רשום פה להוסיף אבקת טיפול או סלש רוטב ולהקפיץ במשך 2 דקות על מחבת.
איזה מוגזמים.
זה היה ספגטי.
הנה, זה... יש מישהו שכתב
כל
שיש
נופל.
לזה טעם לוואי מריר. זה מה שהיה לי, וזה לא אהבתי.
מה זה? מיסו.
טעם לוואי, לא זה עצמו, לא יודעת. פחות אהבתי.
הנה פה רשום משהו אחר. מה אני אוכל מחר? נכון, גם לי יש. לא נכין עכשיו. מה שחשבתי לעשות? לא באמת אני אעשה את זה. דשי... זה... מה? לא אכפת לי!
הנה, כך. יש עוד אחד. זה נראה לי מה שאמור... שככה אתה אמור לעשות.
שוב, הם כזה עם גבינה.
אני כל הזמן מוסיפה גבינה לראמן. הכי טעים.
לראמן?
כן.
וואט?
אחד הטעימים.
אחד הטעימים. כוח פשוט את זה אבל. יש כוח, למי? Just want to eat.
ספגטי. זה יום אחד הטיול או שזה כמה ימים?
How to use food.
What is food used for? How is food? יאללה, קידוק, תורך.
Stir fry.
לא, ממש לא.
לא, זה גם מכינים את זה ככה... נשמע הגיוני דווקא. טוב, בסדר. מה רציתם?
כלום.
וואלה.
פאק יו.
סורי. זה לא, אבל זה לא קאפ. It's not cup. בוא.
גם עוזרים לו, גם מתלונן, אתה מבין?
לך. לא, לא. רותם,
כפרה.
קראי לו.
הוא רוצה רק אותך, קידו.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me.
גם לי ברמן עכשיו.
כן, בא לך? את רוצה? להביא לך?
אם זה בחינם, כן.
פתאום.
קמצן.
שאני אקח לך כסף על קאפ רמן?
אני יודעת. אולי.
למה?
don't know, man.
טוב, אני הולך להכין משהו ואני אחזור.
אתה באמת תחזור או שאתה תחזור?
לא, אני באמת אחזור, אני לא יודע אם תהיו פה כשאני אחזור, אבל אני אחזור. מה יש לי להכין?
אני ערה כל הלילה.
למה ככה?
קמתי ב-5 בצהריים.
למה ככה?
הלכתי לישון ב-8 בבוקר.
למה, מה הבעיה? אבל אני לא באתי בטענות, אני רק שואל. למה? אני מתעניין. החתול...
איי איי איי.
מיל. too much. יופי, אז אני אחזור מעט.
רגע, אתם לא אמורים לקום ב-7 בבוקר? סליחה ששאלתי.
לא. כאילו... לא. בסדר, אני זקוק לזה לפני השינה. כן? לא?
גיטה, אולי תעשה לנו הופעה עם... כן, תעשה לייב סטרים.
של?
כן. כן.
לא.
למה ככה?
ביי.
מעליבים. כן, גם לי האמת. אמרת? אוקיי. Welcome back. באמת? אני לא שמעתי... My bad, sorry.
for a while in my small hometown in Indiana. A new woman moved in a few houses down, and my boss at the restaurant that I worked at told her about me cleaning houses. The woman asked if I would be willing to clean her house twice a week and walk her dogs daily. I agreed, and it was fine for the first couple of weeks. She kept all the pet stuff at the top of the basement stairs and the leashes and harnesses on the back of the basement door. She told me that her and her husband, they were supposed to move to Tennessee, but he went ahead of her and told her not to bother coming down. Apparently, he had been having an affair and was moving the other woman
Why
into
is it
their
home?
new house with him. She asked me to watch
רצת
out.
להתעלב.
חם.
Boyfriend didn't stay at
אבל ממש. לא שמת לב שזה ממש. וואלה. נשמע בחוץ יותר טוב מאשר בבית למטה. הדלקת מאוורר? למה? שים לך מאוורר עומד מחוץ לבית. התכוונתי שתשים מאוורר עומד מחוץ לבית אם אין לך כוח להדליק את זה שם במרכז. אבל זה נגיעה. חסכתי לך 3 נגיעות. אבל לפני רגע אמרת שאתה סותר את עצמך. ברום 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 ברום. איזה חיה? אני רק סיימתי להכין.
כן, מה זה?
זה לא יחיד.
מה זה לא יחיד?
יותר מדי? לא. לא. שלילי. שלילי. לא, מה יש לך? נראה לך? מה, אני רוצה להתאבד? מה, אחי, יש פה 5 קילו מטריות, מה אתה רוצה ממני? מה? אני לא רוצה שתראה.
מי מתעסק? זה מיקו.
מה אתה צוחק? אני לא יודע מה אתה מדבר.
איפה אתה שולח?
פרטי.
למה בפרטי ולא פה?
ככה, כדי לא לעיניים של אנשים.
רום, תשלח לי.
זה עוד עדין בשבילי, אבל עדיין. עדיין לא.
או-אה, נראה טוב. עשית אותי רעבה.
פיתה. פיצה. אתה רוצה לשמוע אותו משתעל? כבר.
her house and dogs because she was going to Tennessee to get some of her stuff that he had taken with him. When she returned, Her basement door now had 2 new padlocks on them, and I was told not to bother going down in there as she had moved the pet stuff apparently. She left for work and I went about cleaning. There were weird dragging and banging sounds from the basement the entire time that I was there though. When I saw her the next morning, she told me that any weird noises from the basement was just from the furnace which she had turned on the day before, which was weird as it was May and already getting hot out and her house wasn't warm at all. And then she became obsessed with me. She wanted me to go to dinner with her all the time or stay at her house. I went to dinner a couple of times, but she was always weird towards me. I ended up having to move suddenly and told her about it, and she almost had a breakdown. She tried to get me to move in with her, in fact, and her reaction just freaked me out. Almost 2 weeks later, she came to the restaurant that I worked at and asked for boxes. She told me that she didn't need my help anymore and that she was moving away. She was acting odd though and like she was in a hurry to leave, and 2 days later, she was gone. Honestly, I think she brought her husband and his girlfriend back from Tennessee and killed them. I moved away about a month later, and I never heard much else about her. My grandma used to live in a 4 stories high flat, and she was on the top floor. She lived there for like 50 plus years, and the whole building is like at least 100 plus years old. Now, when my mum was a little girl, she experienced a lot of creepy stuff. She told me this particular story as I grew a bit older that really stuck with me all these years. One night, while she was sleeping in bed with her little sister, they shared a room, she looked over to the door and saw a man standing in the shadows. Full of fear, she froze and didn't know what to do, so she just stared at this man and decided to wake her sister up while having her eyes fixed on this guy. Her sister woke up and began to cry after seeing this, and her parents, they came into the room and then the man was just gone. Another thing my mum told me was beside the garden door on the bottom floor, there was this little indoor storage area where all residents of the flat could store their bikes, scooters, etc. My mum told me not to go in it. She legit told me that it's haunted and to stay away from it. I never went close to it. In fact, I remember every time I had to go up to my grand's by myself, I would feel an eerie feeling coming from that little compartment, and I would just sprint up the stairs. I would also feel as if something was following me from behind as I was going up those stairs. It was weird. Anyway, that's some backstory of this house, but now, when I was 14 years old, myself, my brothers, and my cousins, we all used to go over to my grand's quite regularly, and back then, we never had phones or anything like that, so we played games like hide and seek, what's the time Mr. Wolf, etc. One day, it was just me and one of my cousins. He was around 11. All of the adults used to sit in the living room and they used to tell us to just go and play because we used to scream, and they used to tell us to close the door as well, which we always did. So my cousin and I decided to play hide and seek this day. I tell him that I'll seek and he hides. He agrees and he goes to hide. I face the wall and begin to count down, and when I finish I go look for him. I start by the kitchen and he's not there. I go to the bathroom, not there either. Then I go to my grandparents' bedroom. Inside the bedroom they had this closet. Well, it was more like a small room with plenty of space in there for like 4 people. But this is where they stored a bunch of blankets and old sort of traditional furniture. And as I entered the bedroom, to my surprise, he jumps out from the closet with both of his hands on his throat, crisscrossing each other, looking pale and sort of blue. And what he says next, I'll never forget. He says to me, with tears in his eyes, "Why did you strangle me?" My first instinct was to call him stupid and say, "I didn't." But then he says, "You were behind me, strangling me. I saw your face." This sent shivers down my spine. In my head, I'm thinking, if I'm currently in front of you, how could I have just teleported in front of you if I was right behind you a second ago? For this to make any sense, I would have had to have strangled him, then I would have to somehow run directly in front of him, out of the closet door without him seeing me, and get to the position that I was currently in, which is impossible. So, being the older cousin, I could clearly sense the fear and distraught that he was in. To lighten the mood, I started to laugh and giggle and said, "Yeah, it was me, ha ha ha. I was behind you." I hugged him, but honestly, I was terrified. We stopped playing hide and seek after that. His mum was mad at me for strangling him, and I just took all the blame. I told my mum what happened when we left my grand's, and she believed me and hugged me, and we just kept it to ourselves. Many years down the line, I was like 21 and this cousin was like 18-ish, and I brought this story up with him and he remembered it clear as day, exactly what happened. We talked, and now that he was way older, he understood what had happened and that it was completely impossible for me to be in front of him like that, and also behind him, strangling him a moment ago. He thanked me for giving him that comfort at that young age and telling him that it was me strangling him. He said for many years that he believed it was me, because I told him it was. He also said that if I didn't say that it was me, he would have been paranoid for the rest of his life. He said that as he grew older, he started to think about that day and started to realize that there was just no possible way it could have been me strangling him if I had just come into the bedroom. In other words, he had started to put it together himself. Thankfully, that house has now been sold, but even as I grow older, there are moments when I feel the urge to drive by it again. Yet, as I approach, a sense of unease creeps over me suddenly, and I find myself accelerating desperately to escape its haunting grip just a little bit quicker. Two years ago, I met a guy on Tinder. Good feeling from the start, so we quickly decided to see each other. He asked me to come and sleep at his place, which I accepted because we had mutual friends. I told myself that he was definitely someone that I can trust. I arrive at his house at 9 p.m. and I immediately see that he's not as I imagined. He looked dirty, his apartment looked like a squatter's house, and there was a smell of stale tobacco in every room. I also see a stack of books on autism when I come into his home, and so I ask about it. I learned at this moment that he is autistic with Asperger's and that he has difficulty differentiating right from wrong. He also tells me that he knows how to analyze nonverbal language really well, and that he knows what a person is thinking just by their attitude. I don't know anything about neurodivergence, but I directly wondered what his inability to recognize right from wrong meant. Anyway, he offers me a glass of alcohol, which I accept, and as I follow him into the kitchen, I see a weapon placed on the counter. I'm a little panicked when I see this, and seeing my look, he explains to me that it's not charged and that it really belongs to his father. I never knew if it was a real weapon, but I'm starting to get a little bit uneasy by seeing it. On Tinder, he told me that he wrote quite a bit as well, like me, so he shows me a poem that he wrote on his computer. Let's just say that it was an absolutely horrific poem. I freaked out at that. I pretended to appreciate his talent because he was really starting to scare me. We then talk about his ex, and he tells me that they'd had fun choking and drowning each other in the shower because they wanted to know what it felt like to have control over the other's life. It was too much at this point. I had swept away a lot of red flags in just a few hours, but I just wanted to leave. Problem was, I had to sleep.
House. I do, huh? Very nice. What? לא נראה לי. היו. היו. לפי מה שידוע לי היו. Что? מלוק. מישהו רוצה לדבר איתו. אה! סופ. באיזה שם אתם יוצאים? זה בדרום? אתה יודע שהטיול מתחיל ב-6, נכון? תזכיר לי מה הוא צריך להיות? הוא יהיה ביהוד, אוקיי. כן.
At his house, so I had to find a plausible excuse to leave without him understanding that I was fleeing the situation. Honestly, I was afraid that he had bad intentions and would come after me if he understood that I was afraid and that I had understood his little game. I discreetly sent a message to my father with the address so that he can come and pick me up immediately. I explained to the boy that Ultimately, I couldn't stay, but that I was really disgusted at not being able to stay longer. I played the hypocrite to perfection. At that moment, we were both in bed, and I was just looking at my phone, waiting for only one thing, to find out when my father was going to be there. At one point, he asks if I'm in a hurry to leave, though, because he notices that I'm looking at my phone regularly. I was scared because I remember him saying that he knew what a person was thinking just by his attitude. I told myself that he was going to take action if I didn't hide my fear, so I managed to make him believe, at least I had that impression, that everything was fine and that I was in absolutely no hurry to leave. He offers me a massage, which I try to refuse, but not wanting him to understand my discomfort, especially since I was soon out of trouble, I accepted. I eventually found myself in my underwear, him on top, and it was horrible. And just as he was about to touch my chest, my phone rang. My father was in front of his house, so I get dressed quickly and barely say goodbye to him as I leave the apartment. I sent him one last message explaining that I didn't want to follow up because his behavior really freaked me out, and then I blocked him. Believe it or not, too, one of my friends matched with him on Tinder a few days later. He had offered to come and sleep at his place, and obviously I warned my friend, who didn't follow up with this guy. Now, I don't know if he was just weird or if something could have happened to me, but I guess the moral of the story is to be careful on Tinder, because it's true that you never really know a person. In the 60s and 70s, it was common for people to hitchhike around the country. My father is blue-collar through and through, and before he got married and had kids, he worked on oil rigs, tarred and gravelled roofs, hopped freight trains with his friends, and even hitched to Woodstock. He's always done manual labour jobs, so he's always been reasonably fit, with an average build, and in the hitchhiking era, he was cautious and aware, but never truly felt like he was in any danger. They even hitchhiked off and on job sites as well. During a snowstorm in New England in the 70s, he was hitchhiking from Massachusetts to see some friends in New York. He said that he would be cautious and choose cars and drivers that looked neat and clean. He wouldn't take any weed or food or drinks offered to him, and he'd be pleasant when talking, but wouldn't give too much personal information away. It was semi-late in the evening, though, and a nice car pulls up. The driver was a man who looked to be in his late 40s, early 50s. He remembers the inside of the car was very clean, and the man driving was white, well-dressed and groomed, and drove along at a reasonable speed in comfortable silence through the sleet and snow. When the car finally approached the exit where my father needed to be dropped off, my dad said that he told the man, "Hey buddy, right up here is perfect. You can just let me out and I know where I'm going after that." The man said nothing, kept looking ahead, driving, and didn't slow the car down. My dad said he then was getting a little bit nervous, so he put his tough guy voice on and went, "Hey man, I'm not looking for trouble here. I told you that you can pull over and I'll handle it from here. Pull the car over, man." The driver then turned to face my dad, and he could feel the car starting to speed up faster, and the guy started smiling. The way he described it made it sound like the creepypasta story The Smiling Man, to be honest. It didn't matter that my father was cursing him out, he just had a blank look behind his eyes and a giant smile. The man then said really quietly to my father, "And where do you think you're going?" He still kept the big moony smile on his face. Dad told me that he thought about grabbing the wheel and making them crash, but he didn't know where he was, and he didn't know if the guy had a weapon on him. He said that he saw a turnoff approaching though, and so he quietly put his hand behind him on the door handle and decided that he was going to try and tuck and roll out or run out if the guy slowed down enough. The guy driving started slowing down enough at the turn for my father to jump out, and he did hit his shoulder on the concrete but was wearing a jacket and work boots, so it sort of cushioned him. He saw an embankment leading up into some trees, so he just used his hands to climb up the grass and snow, ran into the trees and flattened himself on the ground and hid. He said that he thought at the time, no way will this guy come after me. And he saw the man from below get out of his car and start quickly climbing up the embankment after him on all fours. Dad said that he just sprinted further into the woods out of sheer terror. He was banged up by some branches and didn't know if he was about to run into a retaining pond and drown or go off the side of a cliff, but he wasn't going to lie there and wait for this guy to find him. He laid down again and covered himself with some wet leaves at one point. He was too scared to look up and check if the guy was coming after him. He heard noises in the distance, and he believes the man at least attempted to enter the woods. So he laid on the leaves and slush for a long time until he had the courage to slowly move out towards the highway and the off-ramp. In the car, he had left his scarf and a duffel bag of clothes and stuff, but thankfully nothing with his ID. Dad said that he ended up just huddling into himself and kept walking as fast as he could on the shoulder of the road, occasionally ducking into the woods when he heard a lone car coming, and he didn't stop walking until he found the closest town to call someone for help. He never did report it, never hitchhiked again either, even with his friend in a group. He says that even after all these years, he can still picture the guy's face, exactly what he looked like, what he was wearing, and even what the car looked like. I once offered would he like to look at some true crime things to see if he can match the face in case there were actual active serial killers in the area, but he doesn't like to go there and didn't want to do it. He tries to scoff it off and joke about it a lot, but I know that this has stayed with him his whole life because it has honestly really scared him. Back in the summer of 2005, or maybe 2006 actually, I was employed by the National Park Service in Washington State. After spending 8 days conducting trail work in and around Glacier Meadows in the Hoh Rainforest, we began the long hike back to the trailhead. My co-worker, he was hiking ahead of me by roughly 5 minutes, setting a brisk pace as we made our way down the trail. As I descended a particularly steep switchback, I noticed my co-worker engaged in a heated argument with a man that he had just encountered. I paused at the top of the switchback, trying to discern what was happening below. The man, dressed in jeans and a tank top and carrying a fishing pole, seemed to be heading towards one of the subalpine lakes, likely to fish, I guess. His attire was unusual for someone about 10 miles from the trailhead. No backpack, water, or gear, which made him stand out even more. From a distance, I could see the man was visibly agitated, gesturing aggressively as he spoke. When I caught up to them, my coworker briefly explained that the man was furious because he believed my coworker should have stepped aside to let him pass, adhering to the unspoken trail etiquette of yielding to those hiking uphill. But as soon as the man saw me approaching, his demeanor changed drastically. His aggression faded, and he immediately ceased his argument. He walked past me without making eye contact, his earlier hostility replaced by a sudden desire to leave the encounter behind. The entire situation was unsettling to say the least, but we shrugged it off and we continued our hike back to the trailhead. Now, years later, in a moment that brought that strange encounter rushing back, my coworker called. He had been watching a news story about a murder in Alaska and found something disturbingly familiar about the suspect involved. Without revealing any specifics of the case or our encounter, he emailed me a photo of the suspect and asked me what I thought. And as soon as I opened that email, my heart skipped a beat. The face staring back at me was unmistakably that of the man that we met on that trail years before. The man who had seemed so unnerved by my presence during that argument was now identified as Israel Keys. I've always believed in the paranormal. That saying, I still sometimes tend to want to debunk paranormal experiences because, honestly, it's, well, just downright terrifying. This is one experience that still freaks me out, but I sometimes like to play it off as just sleep paralysis, I guess. The experience It happened late one night in my bedroom. Now, my bedroom was super small and I had bunk beds even though I was an only child. I always slept on the bottom bunk and, like usual, that's where I was. I had finally decided to lay down and try to fall asleep. I was lying on my side facing the wall when I felt like I was being watched. You know when the hairs on the back of your neck stand up and it just feels like somebody's in the room with you? Well, that's the feeling that slowly started to creep up on me. My room was pitch black, and as a kid I had caught myself staring into the dark and seeing things in the corners of my room. But this night, I was facing away from the rest of the room, which was a bit odd. Suddenly, though, the feeling changed to not just being watched, but it genuinely felt like somebody was right behind me. That's when I felt someone breathe down my neck. I remember going stiff because it felt like someone was hovering over my back and breathing on my neck. I had this surge to turn around and see what it was, or if it was just my overactive imagination, but I was too scared to even move. My eyes were still open, just staring at my bedroom wall as I felt the hot air on my neck. Finally, I got up the courage to whip my body around so that I wasn't wondering what was behind me when I heard this deep male voice that said, "Don't turn around." So in the end, I didn't. I just slammed my eyes shut and I laid there in absolute terror until I felt the presence behind me leave, the adrenaline pumping through my dissipate, and then, eventually, I must have just fell asleep. So, I need some thoughts on what you guys think. If whether or not this was sleep paralysis or a genuine paranormal encounter. A bunch of years ago, I matched with a guy on Tinder. I was a freshman in college and just got out of a relationship and I was having fun. I matched with this guy, male and 24, and his name was D. He was a little bit odd, but we had similar interests and went to the same school, so I thought, you know what, why not? The red flags, they started rolling in immediately when I said that I would go on a date with him. Of course, the fact that he was so much older isn't lost on me as the initial red flag, I guess, but at this time, I didn't have a car and D offers to pick me up, but tells me that he's not in town, but he would leave his grandmother's funeral early, which was at a minimum 5 hours away, to come and pick me up. He showed up in sweatpants, a wife beater, and flip-flops, which struck me as odd because he said that he was coming from a funeral. We hadn't made any plans, really, just to go out and get a bite to eat and hang out, I guess. Since he had been out of town, he asked if it was okay if we stopped to pick up his dog. He had left the dog with a friend, apparently. I like dogs, so I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. It's dark and we pull up to an apartment complex, and he leaves me in the car and comes back with a golden retriever. The dog immediately starts growling at me, which honestly had never happened to me before, so I start feeling a little bit weird about that. D doesn't say anything about the dog's temperament. Because we have the dog too, he wants to drop him off at his house. This feels logical to me, so I agree. Now, when we pull up to D's house, he asks if I want to come in, and not wanting to sit in the car, I do. The moment that I walked in, I immediately knew that this was the wrong choice. This house was trashed. There is garbage everywhere, trash bags full along the front entry, bottles and wrappers on the couch, and just generally just stuff everywhere. D lets me know that he has a roommate, but that the roommate isn't home. I assume that this is to imply that the mess isn't actually his. After brushing the trash off of the couch, he asks if I want to sit and play chess. I had expressed that I was interested in learning, and he seemed more than happy to help me learn, but this too was a huge mistake. D begins explaining the game to me, and it isn't fun first date explaining. He has suddenly gotten very serious and is showing me each piece while telling me what it is, what it does, and how it moves. Dee then begins questioning me over every piece, which most I got wrong. Every time I get one wrong, he then yells at me the correct answer and tells me to try again. He got more and more frustrated, and it made me very uncomfortable, so I suggested that we pause chess and do something else. Dee suggests watching a movie, which honestly is fine with me at this point. The idea of us leaving and going to get food seemingly forgotten. Dee tells me that we can watch a movie in his room, and I oblige, but then he explains that he has to put clean sheets on the bed. I assumed that we were moving to his bedroom because it may have been cleaner, but when we got in there, it's not, and there is no TV in his room. He proceeds to put Iron Man 2 onto his phone to have us watch it. We watched about 10 minutes of it before things got sexual. I won't tell you strangers the details, but short story short, we didn't have sex, but other things went down. I'll say that those things were consensual, but after they occurred, I was feeling really odd about the whole situation and told him that I didn't want to have sex. Dee was confused, but didn't push it at first. He said fine, and we watched maybe 5 more minutes of the movie before he said that he didn't want to watch the movie and more. He started complaining and asking me why I didn't want to have sex with him, and I simply said that I wasn't in the mood anymore. He then began pressuring me to tell him exactly what it was about him that made me feel that way. At this point, we had moved from the bedroom back into the dirty living room. You might be thinking, seems like a perfect time to leave, and I thought so too, but this is where things start to get scary. As if he knows I'm thinking about how I'm leaving, he explodes and begins to scream at me. This is a 6-foot-something man screaming in the face of like a 5-foot-nothing young girl. Of course, I'm internally freaking out, but I'm trying to make sure that I don't tick him off anymore, but also not agreeing to anything. For the next 5 to 10 minutes, Dee screams at me about why I don't like him, why I don't want him, and continuously asks what's wrong with him and to tell him. I tried to placate him as best as possible, saying the old, "It's not you, it's me," and "No, I don't want to leave." Again, this man is my only ride home, and I am truthfully not sure exactly where I was anyway. Although I did have my phone and Google Maps, I didn't have an Uber at the time. Dee finally calms down when he believes that I'm going to stay, then suggests that we try playing some video games. I was in full internal freakout mode, trying to make sure that I was playing the part of the interested date because I was terrified that if he felt I wanted to leave, that he would freak out again. We played this game for a while, then out of nowhere Dee starts getting upset again. He started yelling about why no one likes him, why no one wants to get to know him, and why no one loves him, saying that he has never had a girlfriend and all his dates have been one-night stands. Again, I placate him with, I don't know, lots of girls are just snooty like that. At this point, I'm saying anything and everything that he wants to hear. He even starts crying about how his mother never loved him, and telling me very deep, dark things about what his mother has said to him and treated him. After he finally calms down once more, he gets up and goes to the kitchen to fix us some drinks. Now, if you're anyone with a brain, you're thinking absolutely not, which was my exact thought at that moment too. I decline his multiple offers for a drink. He asks if instead of alcohol I wanted water, and of course I declined that too, feigning that I just wasn't thirsty. I stayed at his apartment until 1 a.m. because I was sitting next to him terrified to 1. Ask him to take me home, 2. Say I'd walk home, or 3. Figure out how to get an Uber. I had been trying to download Uber on my phone without him noticing, but then it asks for card information and that was too hard to do without him noticing. So, at around 1 a.m. I yawn very loudly and say, "Oh wow, it's 1 a.m. My roommate's going to be so worried about me." I laugh as if my roommate would be stupid to worry, and that I hadn't been watching the clock since he picked me up at like 9 p.m, and then said, "I'm so tired. I should get home soon." Again, I was super scared that he would freak out, but he didn't explode. He just looked at the clock and said, yeah, it was late. But I wasn't taking any chances, so I said, I have a great idea. If I get to bed, soon I'd love to have breakfast with you on campus. I was hoping that my offer convinced him that I was intending to see him again. And it did. He seemed very happy at the prospect of it, and jumped up, walking me out of the house and to his car even. The drive back, though, was excruciatingly long. The ride was completely silent, neither of us spoke. It was only a 10-minute drive, but I could have sworn that he slowed down every time that we got to a particularly dark area or underpass. He dropped me off and I smiled and made a good show of being tired yet excited to see him tomorrow. He offered multiple times to walk me to my door, but I declined every time and said that I didn't want to bother him and that I'd see him tomorrow. I walked myself to the building, and the moment that I got around that corner, I sprinted so fast up those stairs and to my door before he could change his mind and follow me to the door. When I got in my dorm room, I genuinely felt like I had just escaped a serial killer. Even now, sharing this, it genuinely makes my heart race a bit. I never met up with him, obviously, but he begged me for multiple days after to meet up with him again. He even asked to pay me $20 an hour to sit near him in the library. I declined, obviously, and I only ever saw him once after the gym on campus. He didn't see me, and I just left immediately. I've thought about D occasionally since that date, and wondered if all those girls that he had one-night stands with had the same experience that I did. I still sometimes wonder how many girls were there after me, and if they got away like I did. I'm a 36-year-old female in Sweden. I've worked in mental health care for the last 18 years, mainly with people with psychotic illnesses like schizophrenia. I was working in a group home for 9 years and was very close with my co-workers there, especially 2 females. The last few years I worked there, another female started working there too. Her name was M, and the 4 of us grew very close. She was very timid, shy, friendly at times, and we got along pretty well. She was, however, often on long-term sick leave because of her own mental health issues, so we didn't meet much at work, but she always showed up at our after-work dinners, so we continued to stay in touch, even when she wasn't well enough to work full-time. She told us that she had a history of schizophrenia herself, just like the patients that we were treating, but that she was medicated and hadn't had any psychotic episodes for years. Now, since I have an education in psychiatry and a long experience with schizophrenia, I have no judgment towards people suffering from the illness, and it didn't bother me being friends with someone who had a diagnosis like that. And even after what I tell you, I still feel the same way. In the summer of 2023, I had moved on to work in a new place, also with mental health, but this time forensic psychiatry, like a halfway house for mentally ill murderers, etc. The 4 of us stayed in touch and still met every now and then for dinner parties and whatnot. Em told us that she had been evicted from her apartment because of an incident where she had accidentally entered her neighbor's apartment in the middle of the night. She told us that in the huge apartment complex, the doors all looked exactly the same, and that she simply walked in the wrong door by accident, and that the neighbors, they'd created a bit of a scene out of pure drama and reported her to the police. I somehow felt that while that sounded out of proportion to evict someone just from that perhaps the landlord took that kind of action because he judged her based on her medical history, and I felt honestly bad for her. I questioned her if something else happened, and she claimed that it didn't and that this was the full story. In Sweden, it's very difficult to get a contract for an apartment when you've gotten evicted before. You pretty much get blacklisted, and that's that. So Em asked if she could move in with me. Since she was literally on the street, literally homeless, I said, well, of course you can. I've always gotten myself into uncomfortable situations by saying yes instead of thinking about myself, and had no idea just how severe this situation would get when I said yes to Em. So I live in a pretty small apartment. It's one bedroom that pretty much only fits a bed and a desk, a living room that fits a couch and a TV, no room for an extra bed, a small kitchen and a small bathroom, and I have 2 cats too. We decided that Em was going to live in the living room, and I offered her to throw my couch out so she could have a bed there, but she said that she was fine with sleeping on the couch since it's comfortable enough. I insisted on giving her a bed, but she always declined. There's a door between the living room and the bedroom too, but between the living room and the hallway, there's just an open arch, so she wouldn't have total privacy by any means. But I hung up a thick velvet curtain covering the arch, so at least that gave her the sense of a door and more privacy than nothing. There's another door from my bedroom to my kitchen too, so I have 2 doors to my bedroom. I have to have one of them open at night since my cats want to go in and out, and they also have their litter boxes in the bathroom, and food and water in the kitchen. I naturally kept the kitchen door open and not the living room door, since that's where Em lived and we wanted to keep our privacy somehow. She wasn't working at this time because she was on one of her long-term sick leaves, this while I was working shifts, so sometimes I had to get up at 6 a.m. and sometimes I didn't get home until like 11 p.m. I have really severe insomnia too, and I need to combine medication to just get to sleep, and even with this, I still wake up easily. I told her that I would appreciate if she could try to stay quiet those nights when I have to get up at 6 in the morning, but that it's fine if she's loud when I'm at work or when I'm doing the evening shifts because then I don't need to sleep as much. Now, she was a heavy smoker and a coffee drinker, so I bought her a coffee machine. Yeah, I know, I'm a bit of a weirdo who doesn't drink coffee very often, so I didn't have one. But I did this to make her enjoy her living situation a little more. The coffee machine in the sink is placed right outside of my bedroom door. Like I said, the kitchen is pretty small. So the first night together, I had to get up at 6 for my shift. As usual, I had a hard time falling asleep. Em had been up several times that night to go out to smoke, and I woke up every single time. At 5 a.m., she started making coffee, and since it's literally outside of my bedroom door, I was wide awake from the sounds of it. I asked her in the nicest way possible why she was up this early, asking if she had any plans today. I mean, she's on sick leave, so why not sleep at 5 a.m. if you can? And she just said that she couldn't sleep. I said, "Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. I would just appreciate if you could wait with making the coffee till 6 a.m. since I really need this last hour of sleep because of work." Also, adding to why I need my sleep is that I have epilepsy that gets really bad when I don't get enough sleep. I usually get lots of seizures when I don't get at least 4 hours of sleep. I knew that I would probably get seizures at work now, meaning that this day would be both stressful and potentially dangerous for me since there's a huge risk that I fall and hurt myself. And it's really not a good thing to get cramps and seizures among mentally unstable criminal clients who you're supposed to care for. And look, I know it's not an ideal situation to work in that field with my condition, and I can inform you all that I did quit after only 6 months. Anyway, she said that she really wanted a coffee with her cigarettes, but that she would try to wait the next time that I have to work. I accepted it, and I went on with my day, but things just didn't get any better. She continued to wake me up early in the morning and through the nights, and continued to promise to stop, but insisted that she really wanted coffee with her cigarettes. I suggested making the coffee the night before, or drinking iced coffee or Coke instead, but she didn't want that. I should add too that she demanded for me to be silent at 10 p.m. because that's when she wanted to sleep, and genuinely I respected that. She used to get these moments of binge eating too, where she would empty my fridge and pantry from everything that I had. I remember this one time when I bought a big loaf of bread, and she texted me 30 minutes after I left the apartment saying, "Hey, I'm sorry I ate your loaf of bread. I'll buy it back once I get money." Like an entire loaf of bread in 30 minutes. I had told her when she moved in to feel at home and what's mine is yours, so I couldn't really get mad at that, but It did start to annoy me for 2 reasons. I mean, it was getting kind of expensive since it was such huge amounts, and it was always in inconvenient times of the day, like after an evening shift when the store was closed and I came home hungry, and she had emptied the kitchen from literally everything that I had bought the same day. Em also had long black hair that was absolutely everywhere, all over the sink, the floor, the bathtub. I'm no clean freak, but I think anyone could understand that this isn't the nicest thing to step into or see everywhere in your house. She also left her fingernails and toenails on the bathroom floor. There were also pee drops on the toilet seat every time that she had been to the toilet too. I saw a silverfish on my bathroom floor. Never ever seen one before. They eat hair and skin and nails and whatnot, so I figured that this fella probably enjoyed life because of the new dirty conditions my bathroom was in. At first, I didn't want to say it straight out because I thought that it would hurt her and I didn't want to make her uncomfortable. So I just put a broom and shovel in the bathroom to imply that we needed to sweep the floor more often. This didn't seem to work, so after a while, I told her in the nicest way possible with a smile on my face, "Do you think we could try to clean the floor in the bathroom more often? We tend to lose some hair when we brush it, and I'm afraid that we might get pests. I saw a silverfish the other day, and I don't want it to get worse." I always made sure to say we instead of you, so she wouldn't feel attacked. And she promised to think about it, but nothing changed. Now, I started dating a guy around this time, and was head over heels for him. He was also in a roommate situation, so we had a tough time getting any alone time. I asked Em if there was any chance that we could get one night to ourselves every now and then in the apartment, and that she of course would get the apartment to herself as well. She didn't like the idea and claimed that she had nowhere to go, no friends or family. Now, I wasn't asking her to leave for 24 hours or anything, just a few hours so we could just get some quality time together. She could just go to the library or take a walk or whatever. I mean, I was at work for like 8 to 10 hours, 5 days a week, so she got a lot of time to herself. One of our old co-workers realized that this was really tearing at my mood, to never get any time for myself, and I started feeling really suffocated. She offered that Em could stay the night at her place. After all, they were friends too. Em said that she didn't want to bother her, but we told her that she didn't. They're friends. She's more than welcome. And I really just want one night to myself and my guy after all. I didn't understand why she made such a big deal over leaving me and the apartment for just one night. She eventually accepted and spent the night there, and I spent the night away the next week so that she could go and get more alone time too. And when I came home the next morning from my night away, I saw that my cat's water bowl was completely dried out. There was no spill on the floor, and it looked like it had been wiped out with a towel or a paper or something. I had filled it up to the brim just the night before. I asked her how this was possible, and she said that the cats must have tipped it out, but there was nothing on the floor, like I said. But my cats are overly social and usually cuddle up with strangers after just a few minutes, and I noticed that the cats withdrew from her more and more over time, and the last couple of weeks, they never left my bedroom except from when they ate or used the litter box or whatever. It honestly seemed like they were scared of her, which I couldn't figure out since she was just so timid. I had this old saucepan from the 60s that meant a lot to me too. You probably wonder how a saucepan can mean a lot to someone, right? But it was my grandmother's, and it's really the only thing that I have that belongs to her. My mother used to cook for me with it when I was little, so it has a great nostalgic value to me. She burnt it one day and made no attempt to clean it. She left it on the stove and went out to smoke. I found it ruined, and I cried that day. She didn't even say that I'm sorry. She also broke dishes several times and didn't bother to replace them or apologize. This added to my frustration with her naturally, and it had been probably, 2 months had gone by now, and she kept waking me up at night, kept binge eating my food, never cleaned, never left the house, scared my cats and ruined my things. I realized too that she stole my prescripted sleeping pills at one point, lots of them as well, and I only get one per night, not more or less, and As you already know, I really need them. I had 20 of them in my nightstand when I left for work, and when I came home, they were gone. She denied this, which is pretty hilarious since nobody else could have been there. But my frustration was getting heavy. The summer heat was strong, and I felt locked up in my tiny bedroom with my 2 cats, never getting any time to myself, never any time alone with the guy that I was dating, except for once every 14th day. My apartment was messy and she was stealing from me. All of this was beginning to culminate. But one day, out of nowhere, my old elementary school classmate texted me on Facebook, asking me how I know Em. He had seen that I had posted on Facebook that we were roommates now. I told him that we were old co-workers, and that she needed a place to stay because she got evicted. He said, I know, but do you know why she was evicted? Yeah, she accidentally went into her neighbor's apartment. He said, that's not the full story. She broke in and snuck up to their sleeping baby with a knife in her hand, but luckily the father woke up and wrestled her down and managed to save the baby. Thankfully nothing happened, but it was definitely a close call. I felt sick to my stomach. Could this be true? It would certainly explain why she was evicted, but it just sounded so horrible. And she is such a timid, nice girl. I had so many questions. But my friend had the full police report. Apparently the couple that Em had broken into was his ex-girlfriend and her family. It seemed that Em had a psychosis episode during the break-in, but those parts weren't public. It was, however, clear to me that she had been lying to me about why this had happened, and about how long she had been mentally unstable for. I started getting quite paranoid now, and I was already very frustrated with everything, and it was around this time that I really wanted her to move out. We did, however, have a contract that she had 30 days notice, and I knew that if I asked her in a harsh way that it would mean 30 days of chaos until she moved out. So I wanted to handle this as nicely as I could. I started looking for cheap hostels for her that I could suggest to her so she wouldn't be on the streets. I sat down with her and told her that I loved living with her and I feel really horrible for this, but I just miss my alone time and that the apartment is too small for 2 people. I said it wasn't personal and that I wouldn't want to live with anyone right now and that I wished it would have worked out and that I'm really sorry and hope that we can still remain friends. She looked absolutely crushed and said that it wasn't possible. I showed her the hostel that I found and said that I understood that it wasn't the ultimate situation, but I really needed her to move out because I felt suffocated, and also the summer heat was making it tough to always have the door to the bedroom closed, and that it was tough for me to not get my sleep, etc. She said okay. She was going to try and move out, but not until 30 days had passed, and I said of course to this. The first night after our talk, she got up and made her coffee at 2:30 in the morning. I nearly had a mental breakdown that night. I mean, I was going to get up at 6 and I couldn't go back to sleep. I asked her in the morning for probably the 10th time to not make coffee until I get up, but she didn't even answer me that time. She just sat in the sofa and stared out the window. I said, "Em?" and she kept staring. I was a little bit freaked out by that, but I left for work. She kept being weird though, kept making a mess, kept waking me up, kept eating my food, and all I could think about was the incident with her and the baby and the knife and all that. I eventually got so ticked off about being woken up by the coffee maker, I plugged it out and stored it in my attic, which she had no access to. It may have been childish, I know that, but I was just genuinely getting so tired at this moment. My sleeping pills were stolen and I was starting to feel like Edward Norton in the beginning of Fight Club. Well, the next night, I woke up at 4 a.m. by her making coffee in a saucepan. Not my grandmother's saucepan, thankfully. That one was ruined. I tried talking to her again, explaining the situation, but she just stared and didn't reply. Me being frustrated and on the tipping point, took the saucepan and stored it in the attic as well. I know, but I was going crazy and just wanted her to stop with this nightly coffee routines and to just get the hint. The third night, I had the guy that I was dating sleeping at our place because I was getting really paranoid now over her weird behavior, not speaking with me and just staring into space. I woke up from my very light snooze by him poking me, and he whispered, "Look." And in the doorway, M was just standing silently, staring at us. Honestly, this was like a scene from a horror movie, with her long black hair over her face. I kid you not. I didn't say anything at first, because I wanted to know if she just stood there for a second doing something by the door. But I realized after a while that she was actually just standing still staring at us. It reminded me of the ending of Paranormal Activity when Katie just stares at Micah in the final scene. So I sat up and said, "What are you doing?" But before I could finish the sentence, she just slammed the door shut, and I heard the sound of something metal falling on the floor and her running into the living room. I yelled out, "You need to leave," and started crying hysterically because this was turning into a nightmare. Of course, I didn't go back to sleep that night, and I was really happy that I had company that night too. I just kept asking myself, had she done this before? Stared at me in my sleep like that? The next day, when I got out of bed, I opened the door that she had slammed shut and saw a kitchen knife on the floor. So that was the metal sound that I had heard before she ran off that night. At this point, I took all of my knives and locked them in the attic as well. I then asked a friend of mine to come to my house and be here when I tell her that she has to move out immediately, that I can no longer wait 30 days. We were 27 days in. And during the conversation, I really tried to stay calm. I know that she has a mental illness. I know that she means no harm. And even though I was just so frustrated, I couldn't bring myself to hate her. I was mostly scared and tired, I guess, but she, however, didn't even answer when I talked to her. She just kept staring at the window. She left the apartment and she sent me a text instead, saying that I was disrespectful for bringing a friend over to her place. Night came and I thought that this would be a quiet night finally. No coffee maker or saucepans. But at 3 a.m. I woke up by her burning dry coffee powder in a frying pan. At this moment, I just felt terrified of her. Her face was dead, her eyes were black. I suspected that she had gone into psychosis. I stopped the fire and she just ran off to the living room in silence. I knew that she had an appointment with her psychiatrist the next day, and while she was away, I packed all of her things. I then sent her a text telling her that she needs to pick them up and give me back my keys, and that I'll give her money for a hostel the upcoming 26 days. She didn't reply though. The guy that I was seeing came to keep me company in case she would fight about it. She didn't. She left the keys without looking at us and she just left. Our co-workers who were friends with us both told me that she moved in with a guy that she was dating apparently, and she stayed there for a few weeks until she somehow amazingly got an apartment of her own. She started working again, and genuinely I was really happy to hear this. She seemed to be doing pretty well. Then in January of this year, one of our old co-workers told me that Em had called her and told her everything must burn, that she has a baby that she must save, and other delusional stuff. She had called 112, Swedish emergency number, like 911, about this, but they hadn't taken it seriously. Em had then proceeded to burn her entire apartment down because the voices in her head were telling her that she has to burn everything to save her friends and family. Her neighbors had tried to rescue her from the fire, but she had fought them off and ran back in and poured liquor on the fire to make it burn more. She was arrested and sentenced last week for aggravated arson. She'll serve her time in a mental institution or prison for a long time,
Bye.